Welcome to Pigeon River Farm, doing farming right. I'm Robert Brown, the owner of Pigeon River Farm. Thank you for viewing.
Well, Bill, it's great to see you again. I appreciate you showing up. What are you going to be talking about today?
Well, today I'm going to kind of tie up a lot of the presentations I've been doing. Again, it's going to be on pondside tank culture, but I want to give people the feel of they can do it too. I mean, I'm going to give them the designs that I put together to create what I've got, and hopefully people will feel more comfortable doing it themselves.
Okay, we'll make this presentation available to everybody after Bill's done, and then it'll also be available online on YouTube and other sources. So, Bill, I'll let you get going here. I thank you very much.
Okay, thanks, Bob. So, again, I'm going to kind of repeat some of the things that have been done in previous presentations. I'm going to be looking at pondside tank culture, and but this time I want to give you a little knowledge of how I got to where I am, and hopefully this will help you be more comfortable doing it yourself. So what I'm going to do, I think this slide you've seen many times in my other presentations, but basically this is the whole setup I've got. I've got a 3-tank system, and on the back side of that I used to have a 6-tank system, but it's all going to be the same. And so from this picture you're going to see an intake, a pump, 3 sets of tanks that are all from one system, one fed by one pump, and then there's a waste line and everything. And this is all there is. So you should be able to do a 1-tank system. This pump can deliver about 180 gallons a minute, so way over what you need for a 3-tank system, but you can throttle that down and set it just for the species you want. The system can be, I've done it with perch, and I've done it with bluegill. I've had walleye in here, so there's a number of different species you can do, even some that are probably farther south. So anyway, let's get into it, and we'll see what we got. Now, I'm going to pull it apart by sections, if you will. And the first section we're going to do is I'm going to look at the intake plumbing. Now, this section itself will be resting on the dock, if you remember the last slide. So it's not really supporting any weight. The dock is handling all the weight. What you have to know is you're going to have an intake structure, this a fine screen. If you have, you can have broodstock in this pond or other fish, but you want to screen them out. So you have a screen of some sort. It'll also take out the algae if that's and weeds. So you just screen it so you don't clog up the pump or the system. And then you have right here is a backflow preventer. Very simple idea, but you need to have that in case you lose power and you don't want to drain the whole system down. So very simple. These can be a 3-inch or a 4-inch. You can buy it out of catalogs. Very simple. This itself is like a screw-on, so you can have a 3-inch or a 4-inch PVC piece, and it'll screw right onto that. So not a big deal. Like I say, the flapper is set so that the flapper goes down and holds the water. And then this rests on the dock. Typically my pump is going to be neck down to a 2-inch because that's the size. I think I can go as high as 2.5, but my pump in particular is going to be 2. So that's really all you have laying on the dock. I don't think there's anything complicated about it. So this is really the simplest picture I have. Then the next picture, we go down here. This is the intake that you just saw, and it's a 2-inch. This isn't really a pump, but that's all I could get. It's the easiest thing to put down there. But this pump will deliver. What you got to do on sizing the pump is I'm looking at something that's going to cost me 160 gallons a minute but it'll only charge me about $1 to $1.50 a day to run. So that's really worthwhile to have. This is a 2-inch line. I have a fill pipe so that you can prime the pump, and then I come in, and then I go into a 3-inch line. And here's the important part about the 3-inch. All of this, now what you've done is you've come up out of the water maybe 2 feet above the water, and then this line on my tanks, the tanks themselves are going to be about 4 feet high, and it might go 3 or 4 feet, so you're talking about a total head of about 8 feet. That's nothing for this pump. But since this is going uphill a little bit to get to the tank, if the pump went off, all of the water would be coming back down to this. So and at the end of the year, this is only designed to be run during the open water season. I like to run it from May 15th to about September 15th. That's the size fish. I'll talk about that. I've got about a 4-inch fish going into it, and I got an 8-inch fish coming out in that window. So at the end of the year, I close the whole thing down. And in order to save my plumbing and all of that, I put in this end cap, and then I pull that apart and drain the whole system down. So that's why that's there. If you didn't have it, you would have problem. You'd have to figure out how to drain the line without pulling it out. Anyway, there's nothing, again, this is the only valve in the whole thing that's exotic. You've got a valve, and this is a throttle for how fast your water is coming in, how much gallons per minute you're going to go. You've got a fill pipe, a valve, and a clean out, if you will. So that's everything coming off of the dock and heading up the hill to the tank. Now, here's the line coming in from the pump. Came up the hill. You've got a common manifold, and what you're doing is you're looking at the 3 tanks from a bird's eye view. And so I've got this line, and I can go somewhere else with it. I can put more tanks on, but the last tank, I'm going to have again a clean out valve, a valve I can open up and for draining in the fall. And every once in a while, if this line is in continuous use, there is algae going to be built up in here a little bit, but over winter, this algae freezes in the pipe and it scales off. So when you start it up in the springtime, you're going to want to close these lines off and open this line up and blow that duff off right through the line to clean it out, so it doesn't clog up these pipes here. That's what I would do. So otherwise, you got to take these all apart and clean them too. So anyway, there's a number of reasons why. Sometimes you might get an air trap too, and if you open this valve up, it'll take that air out. So you're gonna basically, by opening this valve, remember, you're throttling down to about 10 gallons a minute for each tank. Well, that's a lot slower than can be delivered. So if you want to flush the line out for any reason, let's say algae's building up or you got something stuck, you can open this up and that'll blow the line out for you. And it only takes a couple seconds. You can tell right away if you're getting full use of the line. And then, all right, so now what do we have? If we're looking down, what I've done is this pipe that goes down into the tank, and I'll show you what it looks like in a little bit. This one is pushing water tangential. So you're getting a flow based on the clockwise of the, your water is always going clockwise. So you set that up, and I'll show you a couple of things on that. But this pipe is going to be drilled with 1/4-inch holes all the way up and these are like 2-inch, so you've got that to work with. And then you'll see 2 bottom holes. This is the first thing you do when you get a tank is you put a hole in it. I said, well, it's against what your principles are, but you have to do that. Now, this is only one way to do it. You can also have it so that you got pickups inside which are gravity fed. You can take the solids pickup, but I don't like that because you don't know if it's just stuff that gets in the way, and you don't want anything in the bottom. So what I have here is a larger hole, and this is going to be a 3 or a 4-inch depending upon the fitting that you want to put in here and your standpipe. This one is going to be the standpipe, and the standpipe is the overflow. About 80% of the water that you pump in here is going to go over, and it's going to come out here and go back into the pond untreated. It can't, it's not even dirty, it's clean water. It's almost like it's just passing pond water in and out of the tank. But you get the benefit of the turn and everything else. Now, this drain here is actually the bottom drain, and that's where the solids are collected. So you've got, and this tank is going to be like 7.5 feet in diameter and about 52 inches high. So I don't see anything. I might come back and forth to show you when I get into other things, but that's all there is to these tanks. Very simple setup. All right, so now I take a cutaway view. If you look, here's the common manifold where the water comes in, and off of that is a 2-inch riser, and here's my control valve for I can throttle it down to 10 gallons a minute, or a little plus or minus that. I like 10 gallons a minute. It's almost, you know when you have it, you can see exactly how fast the water's spinning. Now, before I told you my 2-inch pipe going down, could be 1.5, but what you've got is an end cap, and then you can see this first row of these are 1/4-inch holes, and the water comes in, and these are the holes that are parallel to the wall of the tank. Notice that these are 1/4-inch holes, and they're all 1 inch apart, but these are spaced. The row of holes are 30 degrees in toward the center of the tank. And what happens is that by having 2 different lines flowing, you're eliminating dead spots in the tank. So these actually, the bottom ones give you that circular motion all around the bottom, and these take in the center. So you don't have dead spots where solids would accumulate in one spot or another. So that's the intake. And then if what I do is I have an opening there. I'm not sure if this would aspirate, bring in oxygen or air. I haven't ever tested that, but I do need, I'll take a brush and clean this out because we're working with pond water, and you would get algae building up on these holes, and you don't want them to clog up. So you'll take a brush and a long arm and just brush that down once, perhaps once a month might be enough. All right, so we've got the water coming in, and now you'll see what I've got here. This is my bulkhead fitting. It could be 3 or 4-inch. And then these pipes that fit in, now the bulkhead fitting, I'll show you a picture of it. They're generally, they have screws on the inside going down into this and from the bottom too. So you can screw a 3-inch pipe onto the top or the bottom. You don't have to worry about whether this leaks on this because this bulkhead fitting has a gasket. So it's not doing anything. You've got a gasket sealing the water from leaking out around here and getting out. So that's all sealed. So this can just be put on top of a riser, and then you got a 3 or 4 inch pipe going all the way up. Now what you don't have, your overflow's got to have a bellows of some sort. So I use a 6-inch piece of PVC, and I cut it out, and then I wrap it with mesh, with the zip tie the mesh on, and then that becomes the prevent my fish from going over the pipe. And that looks like it for this picture. I don't know that there's any other detail. So the water will go through here. If you bring in water too fast, it can go over, but normally you also have this one here, and I'll show that the next one. This is the drain line, which also brings water out. So I think that's it for this picture. All right, so now this is the other one. Now this is the drain. Again, this drain has a gasket in it, and it's actually, I'm going to show you a picture later, that this is actually embedded into the bottom of the tank so that there's no, the solids can go right down the drain. They don't get, restrained by something that sticks up in the tank. So what we have is the riser, and then if you notice right here, the height of this riser is actually where the water takes the solids and it overflows into a solids removal pipe. That is exactly the same height. So if you lost power, the overflow in the center is up here. This flow is at this height. The water can't leave the tank, and you can have aeration going as an emergency when it detects no power. So there's that. And the other thing I put on the end of this thing is, let's say all your fish were ready for, well, there's two things that this valve is for. One is for draining the tank completely down. And if the fish are ready to go to market, I'm not going to waste my time, siphoning it all down and netting them all out. All you got to do is pull the plug and, everybody at the pool type thing. The other thing that I like to do is, if you got a lot of solids in here, and it's taking their time, they can't lift, the lift isn't going as fast, you can open this up for 1 or 2 seconds and that'll blow the line out. And then when you close that up, the rush going up here takes them all out and into that tube. So that's the whole idea. I've got for all the plumbing. Now, these are two pictures that it's not obvious. Whoops. This is what I have as a bottom plate. Now, this isn't exactly the way it looks. What I'm doing is I'm taking this plate and I'm gluing it and screwing it to the bottom of my tank. And what you see here is the center pipe, which is the one for the overflow. That hole for the tank and this plate are exactly the same size. Your bulkhead fitting, which is this thing, is going to go through that, and you have the gasket on top, and that the two are the same size. What happens on the other one is you cut a hole that's bigger for the blue tank is going to be a little bigger because you want to nest the drain in that hole so that it's flush when you're all done. So you nest the drain in there, and then you silicone glue it in so that it's completely flush. Now when the water's spinning around, all the solids are coming around and they're going right down the drain. And that's what you want. You don't want any obstructions. So that's how these two pieces are set up. Now I'm going to go back a little bit. because there's one thing that's not obvious. Now, now let me go to one more. If you notice, there's an underground pipe here, and there's another one for this line here, right? And so how did they get there? I've done it one of two ways. When I'm constructing this, I tip my tank sideways and I put all this plumbing on here, and this is going to be between 1 and 2 feet of sand. So all this is compacted sand that you're putting these tanks on. And they got to be, can't be any rocks because they'll form little dimples in the bottom of your tank. They got to be, and you can make it a little beveled to the center, but not much. So, but when you're doing this, these are going to be embedded in the sand. So if you put all the plumbing on both of these together before you put the tank down, that means you've got to have the trenches already done, which is okay except for one thing, and I've done it this way. It's almost impossible to backfill and compact the sand underneath the tank, and that'll form a divot in your tank, so you'll get a little bit of a divot if you never compact that, when you're putting it in. But it does work. Now the other way of doing it is as you can see, what I've done is I've taken these holes and I've made the holes in the tank. Then I put the tank down exactly where I want it. Then I put a flag right in the center of the hole. Then I take the tank off, and I'll put a line in from here with the bulkhead fitting sticking up, and I'll run that line out, and I'll put this drain line hole. The drain is going to be one of them screw-in shower drains. You put the receiver for that, so you got that and that sticking up. And then you bury it in the sand and compact it. Now you've got it so that it's going to be smooth. And if you did everything right, when you flip the tank back over, they should match exactly where those are. To me, it's a little more work. It's a little, it might not always be perfect, but there's a little slop in there, and you're going to have a much better fit if you bury the two lines before you put the tank down. I like that better. I do have tanks that have the divot underneath it. It's a disaster, yeah. So and then that's about how far they'll be down too. And this line here is going to go to a common manifold that connects all three of them, goes back to the pond. And this one is going to be the one that goes up. I'll show you that. That's there. And then I've got this. And now here's what it looks like when you've got it all done. Here's the line coming out. Here's the waste line. This goes, and you can collect all three tanks on the same line. It's not that much water going in, and it goes into this green tank I got way on the end. It drops the solids. That overflows and goes into a sand and gravel filter. Here's the line coming out. This is the common manifold bringing the water in. And this is what it looks like. This is the one where if you want to, there's a valve right here that opens this up to let the water out of this tank. And you can't see it right here, but there's a major line. This is the overflow line, connects to this manifold and picks up this one and this one. And on top of that, I've got a 2x4 with a feeder, and I feed a 12-hour day. This is what it looks like when it's assembled. Here's the line coming in. You can see the water coming in, and it's just starting to fill the tank. Here's the, the thing with the bellows on top, and right down here is the bottom drain. There's nothing really fancy, and then I put the belt feeder downstream of the influent, and the feed I feed is a slow sinking pellet, and because it's rotating, the pellets actually distribute vertically and horizontally all day long for 12 hours. So that's how that is. Now, the tanks are designed to take a 4-inch perch. Usually it starts about May 15th because the water temperature in my pond is going to be about 69 degrees, and the fish are feeding actively. They're really hungry. So I can take them at 4 inches, and by September 15th they're going to be ready 8 inches on the table. So some will grow faster, and some a little, but these are all already 4-inch sexed, meaning that I've already got them so that they're probably almost 80-90% females, and they all grow the same rate and fast. I've done this with bluegill. They seem to do real well in the same system. They have no problem. In fact, they actually do better because they will take a pellet faster than a perch, unless they're feed trained going in. But a bluegill doesn't even have to be trained to take a pellet, and they go right to it because they're surface feeders. And when the pellets hit the water, they're banging away at the pellets right away. So they do real well in this system. Now, because the perch are 4 inches, they're able to, the size screen that you put on the top and the bottom, the shower drain size is perfect. 1/2 inch or smaller is fine. I set the flow at 10 gallons a minute, and that gives me a complete change of the tank in a little more than an hour. So that's more than they need, but it actually gives them good exercise. It doesn't bother them all to exercise that much, and it distributes the food exactly the way I want to see it. And you can actually change that based on what you see happening in the tank. If you see the fish actually going and I don't even measure 10 gallons a minute. I can, based on the years I've been doing this, I can kind of eyeball it, but you can always tell if the fish are kind of lethargic, they're not moving very fast, or if they're getting pushed away, they're moving too fast. You can adjust the speed of the influent water based on what you see the fish doing. Now, I don't aerate the tank at all, which is kind of heresy, because you got 1,000 to 1,500 fish in there with no air. Well, you're changing the water once an hour, so you don't need air. They can't use it up. But the thing that I did it last year, I started, or the year before, I had air on all the time. What a mess that is. First of all, it dissolves the food that you got in there and the solid waste. So now, instead of taking all this waste out as a solid and taking it out in a dump in the solid separation, all the stuff is dissolved. So you've just created yourself a big problem. It dissolves the food, so now you've got floating nutrients. All the stuff is nutrients. And what happens when you're bringing nutrients into something that has algae in it? Well, now you've increased all the algae that is going to be growing in the tank. So everything you have in there, not to mention the aerator tube is coming, and that's all full of algae, the center tube, and all that stuff is going to be, all the walls full of algae, the in pipe. So that's a big cleaning thing, and you don't need it. So if for some reason your oxygen got less than 5, then I have an emergency backup with a power supply. But that only happened one day a year, last year, once. So I don't worry about it too much. And I will say for food, I use a 3 millimeter at 4 inches. I use a 3 millimeter pellet, slow sink, and that's fine. And I feed them at about a 2% body weight. So if you do all of that, the fish are going to grow. And remember, you're starting at about 69, 70 degrees, and it's only going to get warmer all the way to September. And perch can stand the temperature, and the highest I ever got was about 78, and that turns out to be a better temperature to raise perch. So you know you're optimizing perch growth by making it warmer, so you're growing faster than you can indoors, because you're not ever changing the temperature on an indoor system, right? So, and that's it. What I want people to do is think about what it would take to just, even if you had a small pond, putting a tank on the side. What you need is electricity, and that's about it. Put a dock in, you've already got the pond, and a little bit of this, and next thing you know, you're raising fish. You can raise fish in a pond without this, but the main thing is we're talking a monoculture. So you're not, all the fish are doing the same thing, and you're raising the same size fish. They're not eating each other, they're all the same size. And by putting them in a tank, you're able, you can still use the pond for relaxation and fee fishing and, you know, soaking bobbers and whatnot. When this is going, and you still got the same thing, but you got a food source for you and all your neighbors. So it makes sense for me to do both. Yeah. And that's it.
Bill, I got a
Yes.
question. On the materials, you, like for instance, when you were penetrating the bottom of the
Yeah.
the tank itself, and so you was on a shower drain, is same as you would be attaching to a bathtub.
Yeah.
And so that, and the other one where you're coming through with a standpipe.
Yep.
How was that sealed again? Just
Well, on a bulkhead fitting,
okay.
you've got two gaskets. Well, you got
Okay, now I'm following
two
you.
screwed
Yeah, you kind
things.
of explained that. Okay.
So, yeah, and one of them it screws backwards, you know.
Mhm.
And then some of these bulkhead fittings also have screws on the inside of the pipe for receiving a small, like a 3-inch. There may be 3-inch by 3-inch, and you just screw it right into the thing, so you've got something to take off.
Yeah, I suppose if you did have a small leak, you wouldn't even notice it anyways, because
No,
you're
no.
putting in.
And I've been, you know, I have had leaks, but basically that bottom plate that I put on, I screw it. Well, first I silicone the whole thing, and then I screw it. And really, the only two places it can leak is one is right around the gasket, which you've got for the center, and the other one is right around the drain. And you silicone that, and as long as, and I ran into more trouble when I didn't put the fittings on by burying those in the sand. By having that thing flop around when you're, you know, you're stretching your metal, and then you might have to re-silicone the whole thing once you got it in. And because it's not supported by sand, it could be flip-flop on the end. So the more I think of it, the worse the idea is. Yeah. Yeah.
I had a question. For where you take the water from the pond,
Yeah.
could you use a 48-inch, say, well point instead of the screened? Or
Yeah.
what were
The whole thing about all of this is the pond going to be, is it fertile pond? If it's a fertile pond, there's going to be algae. The smaller the screen, the more it's going to clog, and you're going to have to clean that. The reason I went with this bigger screen is surface area. So I always err on the side of more surface area, so that if it's going to be a problem, I want it to be and I could stand at the end of the dock with a long-handled brush and scrape it's only 3 or 4 feet below the water. So, yeah.
Did you ever have problems with turtles getting caught on your screen?
Well, no, it's a metal screen.
Okay.
So they,
Only reason I say turtles is when we were siphoning federal dams, some of our 2-inch pipes
yeah.
would catch the baby turtles and that would break the vacuum.
Oh, well, I had a guy, a turtle got into his tank, and it was exactly a 4-inch tank, and he had a 4-inch overflow, and it clogged up the overflow, and the whole lost all of his fish. Yeah. Now, turtles are a problem with anything that's like a mesh that's not fortified. You know, I've had them eat my plastic. Yeah, and if they get trapped, like sometimes they crawl up and they sun themselves on my floating pens. Well, if they fall in and they can't get back out, they'll eat a hole right below the water line. So metal, you know, and I'm almost thinking that there's got to be a better way to do it. So what I'm thinking is I was going to have go to the canvas awning shop and have them make for my floating thing, have them make a canvas that I could zip tie all the way around, maybe this far below the water line, because a turtle isn't going to way below, because he's got to come up for air too. So anything that's right at the interface, it's fair game for them. You know, yeah. Animal damage is always something, but I've never. The only thing that I haven't seen, I know happens, is that I buy bird netting and put it over the top of the whole thing.
Yeah.
And why? Because there's nothing more appealing to a heron or anything that eats fish than to sit right where the food comes in and pick them off as they come. Yeah.
What size are your tanks?
1,200 gallons,
Okay.
and it's a 1,000-gallon usable. So that's an easy number. So there's about this much, maybe 200 gallons of freeboard, and that gives you some play with the height of the pipes, and you know, yeah. And the reason they're 7.5 feet is because that's how long my arms are with a cleaner. Anything longer than that, my arms get tired. I'm not Moses.
So, we're talking about adding oxygen or not having to. Are there certain ponds that people would have where it just doesn't hold enough oxygen in that environment where it would be necessary to add it? And is it possible to add it on the intake side by sort of a Venturi effect?
Well, that's my next step is there are people that have started to put Venturis in, and that's a good idea because now we've got an oxygen coming in that maybe was deficient. The smaller the pond, the less oxygen. I shouldn't say the less. The wider swings that you're going to have, because you could get a very productive pond, meaning photosynthesizing. It could go supersaturation, way over 20 parts per million in the daytime, and way under what's required for fish life at nighttime. So those ponds are dead. You know, you'll say, well, this little pond doesn't hold anything but the most tolerant minnow, right? So you'll find ones that have minnows and bullheads. Why isn't there anything better than that? Well, those are the most tolerant, you know, and that's because you get these wide swings in what's going on in the pond. So I have a 1/4 acre pond. I'd say, well, 1/4 acre is, you know, it ain't very big. And then I just gave a presentation on the manure pits, and these guys, the manure pits are way bigger than 1/4 acre pond. But in this 1/4 acre pond, I'm sitting there looking at it, and I say, well, the water, if you don't throw and the reason I put the fish in the tank is because I don't want the waste in the pond. So I'm taking the waste out of the pond before it goes in the pond, there's another guy, my counterpart, says, well, we're gonna take the water out of the pond and treat it and then put it back. He says, why would you do that if you didn't put it in the pond? No, try to fish out of the pond, take the waste out, and I can get bigger, and the bigger I get, the more I have to pay attention to what am I doing with the waste. So I have to get to maybe an activated sludge system with a building solids and settling them out, and then going over. But what I see is that when you start treating waste, the things that eat the waste take up more oxygen than the fish. So what comes out of that waste treatment thing needs the aeration. And once you aerate that, you don't have to aerate the fish then. You can put that in the pond.
That brings me to another question is, it's more obvious what depletes the oxygen in the pond, but what would cause the oxygen to spike? Is it based plant life? or rain?
Photosynthesis.
Okay.
Yeah, it's really, yeah. And like I said, it's a chemical reaction. But boy, oh boy, when you've got primary production going on, I've seen it. The meter was buried on the high side. It couldn't eat it, take it all. So, and that, that's not good, because the process of photosynthesis actually raises the pH, and it goes from neutral. It can go from neutral to 9 in an afternoon. Well, 8.5 is when ammonia gets toxic. So you got to be careful of letting it go too high. So you want to pay attention to the pH when you've got very high production. Yeah. Yeah.
What about the swimming pool vacuums for cleaning the bottoms?
Well, there's a lot of different ways to do it. I think the main thing you want to do is do something that does it by itself. So you can, I know that we had a bigger tank design, and what you do is you turn the lines on and let the water start going around, and by golly, the solids will start accumulating in 1 or 2 spots. So when you look at that, now you can have an inverted system where it automatically siphons. So the water's got to get out. So instead of having a drain in the bottom, you can have that inside and have it come out the side and over the top. Because, well, not quite over the top, but a side, and the water coming out will pick up the solids right where it's being accumulated. But then it's a structure inside. Yeah, but when you get bigger tanks, you're going to have that problem. And then a lot of people, everybody's got aeration going 90 miles an hour, and the water is boiling to the point where you can't see what's in there, and you can't see that they're boiling the solids down to a dissolved solid. And now they've got a real problem with waste treatment, and that's exactly what indoor aquaculture is. Everybody that has an indoor aquaculture system has a multi-component system for cleaning up the solids and dissolved solids and making solids and destroying solids with your bacteria and getting the ammonia out and all of that. This is so simple. It avoids, you can see why there's no dollars involved in this compared to an indoor system, because I'm using Mother Nature to absorb a lot of this stuff. And apparently I don't raise enough fish to cause a problem. So, yeah, good questions.
Okay, Bill, that was an excellent presentation. I learned an awful lot. So this information is going to be available. I'll be putting it out on YouTube and some other sources out there. And hope everybody had a chance to learn something. We'll have there's some drinks and stuff in the back, some donuts and so on. So I appreciate it very much, and I guess we'll see you in a couple of weeks. You got another one planned. Is that correct?
Yep. Okay.
Okay, looking forward to it. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Yep.